With us throughout the day, well done, keep on going, an hour till drinks, but a very stimulating hour. I'm Stephen Sacker. For those of you who haven't followed any of my sessions through the day, I'm the presenter of a show called Hard Talk on BBC World News, and my job is to ask rigorous, challenging questions of people of influence and power around the world. And I'm delighted to say that I've got a fascinating subject and a great panel to host this afternoon. We are going to be looking at the potentially very exciting issue of investing in BRICS tourism. And before I introduce my panel, which I promise I will do in just a moment, I'm just going to give you a couple of thoughts, perhaps that might keep us going as we go through the next hour. And the format, by the way, will be that I'm going to invite each panelist to open up with really a couple of minutes of big picture thoughts about where the tourist industry sits in their country right now, where they see potential growth points, what excites them most about the tourism business in their own country. We'll have that for 2 minutes from each of them. Then I will be asking them questions, sensible questions, I hope. And then if they haven't been very sensible questions, you can do a better job, because I do want you guys to be involved as well. I'm sure many of you in the room are in business looking at the potential of working with BRICS countries, either investing in their tourism sectors where they are, or trying to exploit the opportunities that will come with rising numbers of tourists coming out of BRICS countries to other destinations. So whichever way you look at it, there's a huge amount of potential there, and I do want your questions. So we'll make sure we leave time for that. Now, if any of you are scratching your heads thinking, what on earth is he talking about, BRICS? Well, I suspect there aren't many of you who are thinking that anymore, because it's become such a familiar phrase. A gentleman that I interview quite frequently on Hard Talk is a guy called Jim O'Neill, who's the chief investment assets manager at Goldman Sachs. And I think he's the man who really first coined the phrase BRICS. And of course, it really is just an acronym for four originally, and we'll get to that in a minute, now 5 of the most powerful emerging economy nations. Of course, Brazil, Russia, India, China. And the S used to be just the plural of BRICS, and now it actually is more meaningful because South Africa has formally been invited to join the BRICS nations. So we've got South Africa as well. And I suppose the thing that strikes me most about the BRICS and about their place in the world is that perhaps all too easily we commentators and journalists in the media talk about a global economic slowdown, or we talk about a worldwide recession, and we sort of imply that what we're experiencing, the very tough times we're experiencing in our economies in the West right now, the industrialized nations of Europe, the United States, Japan as well, we assume that our experience is the global experience, and of course it absolutely is not. And while we talk about slowdown and recession, you only have to look at the statistics coming out of China, India, Brazil, and to a certain extent, Russia and South Africa, to see that there are still massive growth realities in the world today. I mean, India growing roughly, what, 7 to 8% over the last 3 years, will maintain roughly that sort of growth for the next year. China currently growing between 8 and 9%. Talk of something of a slowdown, but if that's a slowdown, going from 9% to 8%, then all I can say is we'd like a bit of your slowdown. You know, the growth rates are phenomenal. Brazil still growing strongly, not perhaps as strongly as you have been, but nonetheless it's a very strong story. Russia and South Africa are a little bit different. You've both seen growth rates come down, and you have been involved to a certain extent in the worldwide economic problems, but nonetheless, the way in which your economies are built at the moment suggests there is an awful lot of growth potential to come. So, you know, this is a growth story, and I think that's why this debate is going to be so important, which of course then begs the question, what does this mean for tourism? What does it mean for opportunities inside these countries for businesses to undertake new ventures, whether it be anything from hotels to other aspects of the leisure industry, to joint ventures of all different sorts? travel itself, you know, what business opportunities will there be in these countries for outsiders to exploit? And perhaps even more relevant and germane right now, how can we exploit the fact that there are going to be rising numbers of newly prosperous people in all of these countries who are taking advantage of opportunities to travel, who are more aware than ever before of the world beyond and the desire to travel and the fantastic opportunities for travel that there are now. And how can we as businesses get a part of that? How can we make a profit from this new opportunity? That's something that I'll be asking all of our panel to address at some length. So it seems to me this is a panel that's all about opportunity, but it's about challenge as well. And some of the challenges, I suppose, come in understanding everything from the cultural background that these countries and their potential tourists and their businesses bring to this business of tourism. It's very important that everybody understand, you know, how best to operate in these countries. There's also an issue of understanding regulatory frameworks. You know, what sort of rules and regulations will govern investment in these countries, but also how can we best tap into the economic opportunities that come out of these countries, and what sort of both conventions and rules may be involved in exploiting those opportunities. Joint ventures, just one thing that springs to my mind immediately. So a final thought from me is that reputation is also, and perception is also a big part of this. You know, if we're talking about a new exchange between the developed world, the industrialized world, and the powerful emerging economies, then perception is a part of this. You know, all of these countries have perhaps a particular perception in the UK and in the Western world, you know, and just picking up, and you may hate me for this, but some of the problems that there may be, you know, there might be a perception, for example, in China that freedom of travel may be an issue for tourists who go into China. You know, just exactly how much freedom do they have to do what they want, to develop the itinerary they want. Maybe in Brazil and maybe in South Africa and Russia as well, issues about security. You know, how secure am I going to be when I'm in country? You know, we read about crime rates in big cities. Goodness knows we read about it in London, but we also, of course, read about it in cities from Rio and Sao Paulo to Joburg, and indeed Moscow as well. So, you know, perception is an important part of developing relationships between different countries and between the developed world, the old developed world, and the emerging economies. And in India as well, issues about the reliability of infrastructure and exactly how good the quality of service might be in some parts of your tourism sector. So strikes me that's something to explore as well, but that's enough opening waffle from me. What I'm going to invite every panel member to do is give us 2 minutes of insight. I'm going to introduce them one by one as they do it. So just starting on my immediate right, please, first of all, warmly welcome, if you would, Adam Wu, who is Chief Operating Officer for the China Business Network. And welcome, Adam.
Okay.
So, Adam, if you would, just paint me a 2-minute sketch of where you see the Chinese tourism industry, the sector right now, where you find the growth points, where you're most excited about what you see as the potential of your tourism business.
Right, thank you. I think it's a good moment to ask this question because the UNWTO just released their data showing that China has already become the third largest the country that with the third largest country, country with the third largest tourist arrivals, and with fourth largest tourist receipt. So that gives you just a number of certain numbers I was asked to quote, but China had 2.16 billion visits, so that's the number of people. And eventually, by 2020, as projected by UNWTO again, that China will become the largest tourist country in terms of receipts, particularly numbers of people coming. But China has also very fastly becoming one of the fastest, actually, outbound markets, which we focus more on. And I understand that many of the audience may want to know how to reach the outbound market in China.
But just to be clear about those figures, you're saying in terms of inbound travelers coming to China as a destination, it is soon going to be the biggest destination in the world.
Yes, by 2020. That was the latest projection. And of course, in terms of outbound travel from China, we grew from under 10 million back in 1999 and to 58 million last year, and projected to be 65 million this year. So that is more than the total population of UK.
No, these are staggering numbers, and I can feel people seeing the potential as you give them. Where could it be in 5 years, do you think? 100 million?
True. That's exactly what the revised projection, not official yet by UNWTO, because they still quote, say, by 2020. But the unofficial figures are projected by certain research institution that we may well reach to 100 million outbound visitors by 2015, the next 5 years, yes. So
the future of tourism is Chinese?
It is, and the even better news, as this was confirmed by the Secretary of State of Culture, Media, Sport, Jeremy Hunt, during the opening ceremony, that Chinese are also highest spenders in many of the destinations we visit. We did a big function for the London Luxury, which covers Regent Street, Newbourne Street, and Oxford Street. The Chinese spent, just the visitors spent £200 million shopping just in West End. So the total amount of money Chinese spends overseas was 48 billion US dollars.
And just to be clear about this, the Chinese government loves this as a trend. I mean, it's not worried about it, it's promoting it.
It's true to a certain extent. Also, it's never the responsibility of CNTA, which is our National Tourism Administration. Their job is to promote China outside. But of course, China is one of the very few countries, I can't think of others apart from Japan in the 1980s, that has a very special policy called ADS agreement with over 140 countries. ADS stands for Approved Destination Status, which means that China signs agreements with receiving country or a block of it, like EU, so that those countries are proactively welcoming Chinese visitors by simplifying visa procedure and so on. Just a moment ago, the Minister of South Africa did confirm that they will simplify as well. That's on top of the ADS agreement. And when our Deputy Chairman of the CNTA came to meet up with Jeremy Hunt, with John Penrose, your Minister of Tourism, and he raised the issue of how UK can simplify the visa issue. Also, it's not really the job of CNTA, but because the foreign tourism authority, the ministers of tourism or tourism boards want to attract Chinese, and the Chinese authority will say, okay, if you want to, obviously, the problem that Chinese visitors encounter the most is the visa issue.
All right, well, I'm going to stop you there, Adam, because you've given us a great, staggering sort of thumbnail sketch of the growth in the sector in China, both incoming into your country and outgoing, which is phenomenal, the numbers you're talking about. So we'll unpick what that might mean and how it can best be exploited by the tourism business around the world in some detail later. But if you would now, Janine, take it away. Let me just first formally introduce you. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Janine Pires, who's the former president of Embratur Brazil. So please give Janine a warm hand.
Thank you.
And again, same thing, Janine, looking at it from the perspective of Brazil, just tell me where you see your tourism industry right now and where you believe it's going.
Okay, thank you. Well, first of all, I would like to thank for the opportunity of being here and share some news about Brazil. And I've point very brief 3 points. The first one is that the economic growth and the social inclusion in Brazil has changed our country into a big domestic market and also outbound market. So Brazilians are consuming not only goods, but starting to travel within the country and outside the country. Just to have an idea, in the past 8 years, around 30 million Brazilians overcame poverty. So we have around half of the population in the C class. It means people spending money inside the country, and of course traveling abroad. I feel that these good numbers that Europe is having, like 6% more, has our contribution here, because our citizens are traveling to Europe and to other destinations. So,
well, actually, I was going to interrupt for a second. When you talk about the huge new numbers of people who have the ability, the economic ability to travel in Brazil, how many of them would be looking to travel beyond your own continent, you know, out of Latin America?
Brazil, South America started an integration in a very few years ago, and I feel that it's going on very well, because we have better flights linking the countries. Of course, we have the Amazon, we have some physical barriers to travel by land. That's why the air flights and the links between the countries by air are so important. But inside Brazil, this year, from January to September, we had almost 50 million trips domestically. It means 16% more than last year. And international arrivals also are growing around 15%, so it's a lot. Brazilians are spending a lot of money abroad. It's between the countries that we have the last data from UNWTO, around 40% more. This is one thing interesting that we could discuss, because the travel behavior from Brazilians, and I feel, maybe I don't know quite well, but from China or from India or from Russia, the travel behavior is very different. For instance, Brazilians, they spend around 70% buying things abroad. And international visitors in Brazil, they have a different way of traveling, because they are experimented travels.
Yeah.
And we are, like, some Brazilians are traveling for the first or second time to different countries, so it's kind of a thing to discuss. And the most exciting point that I could mention is, of course, the World Cup and the Olympic Games, because this will bring to Brazil a very accelerated new infrastructure points, airports, roads, qualification, new hotels. So we have a lot of opportunity when we think about Brazil as a tourist destination inside the country for investments in the Olympic Games, in hotels, in all the tourism service industry, and also people are looking for Brazil as an outbound market, traveling in South America, traveling to North America, to Europe, and now we have new good air flights with all the countries, which is very good, because we are very far from Asia, and now we have a lot of air carriers flying between countries.
Great, Janine, that's an excellent introduction. Thank you very much for that. I'm going to just move one chair over right now and introduce you all to Sergei Stanovkin, who is director of DAS Consulting in Moscow, knows as much about the Russian tourism business as anybody in the country. So please give Sergei a warm welcome. So you're the R in BRICS, Sergei, but the profile of your economy is a little bit different from, if I may say so, from the other BRICS emerging economies. So just tell me where you see tourism now in Russia and where it's going.
First of all, we need to decide either Russia, Europe, or Asia, because I noticed that very often Russia is well known as a European destination, and we forget about Asian part of Russia. But at the same time, we're neighbors with China, and we have a lot of events happening in our Far East. And for Russia now it's a great time, because tourism in Russian economy is just over 1% at the moment, but I believe it will grow very, very fast, because just recently government developed the program for tourism.
I mean, it's interesting, if you don't mind me asking, why has it been so low? I mean, 1% is obviously very small. Why is it starting from such a low base?
Obviously, we are a very industrial country, and oil and gas and metallurgy and machinery and space and all the rest. It's taken a lot of efforts and it's producing big numbers in terms of
I mean, to put it
GDP.
bluntly, you know, obviously until things changed in '89 and then your own sort of end of communism in 1990, 1991, you didn't particularly look to receive many visitors. I mean, does Russia really now want to open up a tourism business to invite as many people as possible to come into your country?
If I answer just yes, then I need to prove it. And one of the proof is that now we have got changes in visa regulation. And it's not easy to get a visa for Russia on one hand, but on the other hand, to get visa for St. Petersburg, or if you're on cruise ship, you can get visa-free travel up to 72 hours.
Right, but I take this very personally because I travel to Russia quite a lot and it is a nightmare getting a visa. So
not by cruise ship.
So, no, but I'm not coming by cruise ship. I mean, right. I'm trying to fly to Moscow.
So you're business traveler.
Yeah. Well, but even if I weren't a business traveler, to be honest with you, I come sometimes to do conferences like this, and the authorities are perfectly happy for me to come in on a tourist visa. But even getting a tourist visa is a much greater effort of time and money than it is in most countries. And when are you going to change that?
I think that it's always it's a political question. So if for Russians it's sometimes difficult to get visa for some country, then obviously citizens of this country getting problems with getting Russian visa. I think it is obvious answer.
It's the old
On the other hand, what we can say that, for example, for Russians it's impossible to get visa-free travel to Britain, but for British citizens it is possible.
Fair point.
So you see, we are trying. We have made some steps, and. Just talking about infrastructure, I think it's important to mention that we were hosting quite few international events like Olympic Games in Sochi 2014.
Yeah.
And it's a big boost to Russian tourism industry. And even before Olympic Games in 2013, we have university in Kazan, it's Tatarstan. And for this event, Tatarstan have made big investments and they have created very good facilities, not just for sports, but for tourism industry. And then at the moment they have started to utilize it. And
if I may, Sergei, because I don't want to keep you too long on the opening remarks, but just very briefly, we certainly know in London of the power of the Russian visitor, the outgoing Russian visitor coming to our shores, many of them, and frankly, quite a lot of them, quite big spenders. And I imagine this is something, you know, as your economy develops, and goodness knows you've got huge economic potential, that's going to be a very important factor around the world. Russian visitors are going to be a big factor. Yes,
and for Britain, for example, they are not just coming, Russians coming not just for leisure trips or business, but they learn languages. And for Britain, I think it's a big segment of the economy that Russians coming to Britain to learn English language. And I think over the years it will just grow, because Britain and Europe is a very popular destination, as well as India, China, and Brazil, and South Africa.
All your fellow colleagues and rivals.
We travel the world. And at the same time, what we're offering at the moment, it's interesting that Russia has got 9 time zones.
Yeah.
From east to west. But at the same time, Russian tour operators, they offer trips to Northern Pole and to Southern Pole. And even you can travel to space now with Russians. So basically we're covering the globe.
Right,
and, but the major issue for Russia now, we have got cultural heritage. In the past it was difficult to go to home places of Pushkin, Tolstoy, Dostoevsky, just because of infrastructure. Now infrastructure is built and it's much easier to go to these places.
Right, excellent. Well, Sergei, thank you for that. I'm going to stop you there. You raised the question of infrastructure, which is something I suspect that our fourth speaker may address in his own country. So please do welcome Sanjay Kothari, everybody. He's a senior official in the Indian Ministry of Tourism. So please give him a warm welcome. And Sanjay, same thing for you. Give me a broad impression of where the industry is in India. Yeah. Infrastructure seems to me to be one issue you're going to have to address, but take it away.
Yeah, you just mentioned that India is growing at 7.8% over the last 3 years. Now, due to this global recession, we have been monitoring tourism quite closely. Let me just tell you the figures. First 9 months, we have grown at 10.1%. And the figures for October have just come in. It's again 10.1%. So we steadily are growing with this rate. Secondly, we have just been checking about the business that has been transacted in WTM. It's quite good. So we hope that it continues in the same spirit. Now, domestic tourism is a very powerful engine in India. You can't imagine the figures. It's 740 million, and mainly religious tourism. It's huge, it's mind-boggling, but that's the strength that India has. And that is one reason when we had this global meltdown, we could survive and we could push forward tourism. The other issue which you had mentioned was the joint ventures. Yeah, that is right. In fact, hotel sector is totally in the private hands. But in other activities like amusement parks, like other areas, the day entertainments, the night entertainments, we are opening it out to joint venture. We have the viability gap funding, which we provide to the private entrepreneurs. Land is a big issue in India. So another private-public partnership is through land. The third thing...
let me stop you there. I mean, red tape is a big issue in India. And have you sort of slashed away some of the red tape, the famous Indian bureaucracy?
Yeah, in fact, it's good that you have mentioned. The Ministry of Tourism is only a catalyst. The whole tourism trade is driven by the private sector. The business is transacted by the tour operators, by the hoteliers. We only facilitate, we see to it that they get the right environment, they interact with the right people, and we are trying to cut it down, but the growth, if you look at the growth, our outbound is double than the inbound, is 11.24 million.
So you're talking about Indian outbound tourists. I mean, you know, the figures we heard from China are amazing.
Yeah.
You guys, population-wise, are very similar now, and I believe very soon India is actually going to overtake China as the world's most populous country. But while Adam's talking about the potential for 100 million outgoing Chinese within the next 5 to 10 years, where do you see India's potential in terms of what might be achieved in outgoing numbers of Indians?
Before I answer this, let me address the other question which you had mentioned, that was about the reliability of infrastructure.
Okay, yeah.
Now, on the infrastructure side, India is a complete destination. It has a very old heritage, it has culture, it has hill station, it has a long beach. We are building up an infrastructure. The 3 airports in India, this Delhi, Bangalore, Hyderabad, matches with the best in the world. We are concentrating, I agree with you, but we are concentrating on an infrastructure. What we are looking at is a repeat tourist. It should be an experience of tourism. So we are opening out different areas. In the next 5 years, what we plan is...
Are you building more hub airports? Because, you know, with a population of 1.2 or 3 billion,
exactly,
claiming that you have 3 really good airports isn't good enough, is it?
No, the total airports which are coming on the international side is about 34.
Yeah, but some of them aren't very good.
In all, there are about 60 airports. The 3 have been raised to the international airport. Delhi now has 70 airbays. Yeah. So Delhi matches the best hubs in the world.
Listen, I know you've invested a lot, and in Delhi, spanking new airport and all that. But I'm just saying, you know, can you point me beyond Delhi, Mumbai, and Bangalore
there
to
are 30 more. There are 30 more airports which are coming either in the private sector or in the government sector. But already existing airports are also being upgraded. The private sector has started investing in the airport. That is one very positive feature. The other area of infrastructure is the roads. And roads, we are making connectivity easier. We are making international flights easier. And that is where we are moving slowly but steadily. You were asking a vision. In the next 5 years, we want to double our foreign tourist arrival. We want to grow at 12.24, both on the foreign tourist arrival as well as the domestic tourist arrival. One last thing which I would like to mention, tourism in India is being seen as a vehicle for employment generation. And employment generation in all parts of the country, not those who are in the IT sector, those who are hospitable. As you know, India is known as a country where Atithi Devo Bhava is the slogan, where guest is God is the slogan. So we are going into the feature that everyone is being trained, jobs are given to these people, and economic development comes along with employment generation, which is a major issue all over the world. As far as my as far as my colleagues are concerned,
ending on the notion that the guest is God is a good place to stop for right now. So I'll stop you there, and we'll get back to some of those issues. Thank you very much. And ladies and gentlemen, finally, patiently, let's please welcome to the panel Roisin Singh, who's the Chief Marketing Officer for South Africa Tourism.
Thank you.
And Roisin, you know, your country is the most recent member of the BRICS, and, you know, perhaps you don't quite enjoy at the moment the amazing growth rates that some other panelists have talked about, but tell me where you see your tourism industry right now and where it is going.
Well, I think, like you said, South Africa is a new member of BRICS. We joined in April this year. But all South Africans know that we're always punching above our weight, and we tend to get there eventually. So even though we're a much smaller economy than the rest of the nations around the table today, we've been doing fairly well in tourism, and last year we had a 15% growth on our numbers, and that was largely driven by the fact that we hosted the FIFA World Cup.
Right.
So this year the numbers are not looking as good, but we've already seen that overall we're about 4% growth from all our markets. But our domestic tourism is, again, a big part of what we do. But what's important for us is that, you know, tourism goes to the heart of the aspirations of people and communities and generations worldwide. And tourism can really contribute to global peace and harmony. And, for, you know, because tourism is about people. Tourism is about cultures and people, and it's about how people feel about each other and the countries that they visit. So being part of BRICS for South Africa is as much as the trading partnerships that we have. China is the largest trading partner of South Africa, and you know, that's new because it used to be Europe in the past, and they've been overtaken by China, so that's important for us.
And considering that partnership, is tourism going to be a big part of that? You know, we heard Adam's amazing numbers about how many Chinese are going to be traveling out of China. Is South Africa very actively looking at how to make sure plenty of them come to South Africa?
Absolutely. We have an office in China, a South African tourism office. We've had double-digit growth out of China this year and out of India. So, you know, we've had growth of 40% out of India and 30% out of China, 20% out of Brazil, if you just remove the buffer of the World Cup, because a lot of Brazilians came in.
Right.
But, you know, South Africa offers you an entry into Africa, and especially into Southern Africa. So one is accessing the whole of Southern Africa. And our unique proposition in South Africa is that, you know, we combine the African old-fashioned hospitality with very first world infrastructure. So there's nothing missing in terms of our technological advancement, in terms of our airports and transport infrastructure. And, you know, you still have the experience of African culture, warmth, hospitality.
Great. Okay. Well, thank you for that, Roisin. I'm very aware, not least because I was hosting the awards at the World Responsible Tourism Day event this morning, that this is the day where WTM really focuses on responsible tourism. And maybe that's something that we should all talk about for a moment now, because I just wonder whether all of you feel that there are major lessons to be learned about how not to develop your tourism industries from what you've seen in certain parts of the developed world. I mean, you know, just thinking off the top of my head about things you might have seen in the development of the Mediterranean coastline, for example. I just wonder whether here on Responsible Tourism Day, you can tell me how your sectors, your industries, tourism industries, are going to be developed in a truly responsible and sustainable way. Adam, why don't you kick me off?
It's such a...
Or maybe you can't, I don't know.
True, yeah. It's such a dilemma and a contradiction where almost every single country wants to have visitors in, and as many as possible. Of course, many of those destinations aim for the high end. Once again, they don't want mass tourists. And I don't think the number of Chinese going abroad constitutes mass tourists at all, because they are spread all around the world anyway.
Oh, I think it does. When you've got 100 million potentially going abroad, overseas, that's mass.
Sure, if they are going to one destination.
Well, yeah, but even if, frankly, if they're going to 20 destinations, you divide 100 million by 20, I'm not sure my maths can do it, but what is it? It's, is it 5 million? Thank you very much, sir.
Okay.
We are mainly going to Macau and Hong Kong.
A lot of, and that's mass.
They have around 30 million going long-haul destination from China.
So there are certain destinations where, frankly, you know, there's an intensely heavy sort of burden. Well, burden may be a pejorative word, but you know, the presence of Chinese tourists is very felt, shall we say, in these destinations. So both on that level, but also in the level of the way you're building your own resorts, your own destinations inside China. Are you really confident that you're doing it in the right way, the sustainable way?
The CNTA is encouraging all the resort hotels being built, developed in the environment-friendly way. I remember Chairman Shao last year on the Minister Summit speaking of increasing 5,000 five-star hotels, but all of those have to adhere to the international standard of environment-friendly and so on. And of course, when you travel to a state, you must have, in any hotels in China, we have the same sign, same language in English and other languages that the towers, you know, if you don't have to change it, then leave it not to change it. And in the old days, I think that tourists used to waste many of those, even business travelers. But we are building up that awareness, and the Chinese visitors going abroad are being not just advised to. Actually, sometimes even this regulation, we had our deputy minister for those behaviors for Chinese going abroad to actually come up with a regulation that when we do go abroad, what we should or should not do. And one of those things is not waste the resources, but what we cannot do is to stop Chinese going or stop anybody else going, because the whole purpose of the ADS was to reduce the trade surplus that China built up with so many countries, because we can't always import back what we exported, whatever shirt or anything else. But what we can do is to encourage Chinese to go abroad to spend money. It's kind of export for those receiving countries. That's why I named Japan as a comparable in the 1980s when they came in, you know, coachloads, and the same policy is applied by the Chinese government.
You make it sound as though the top priority for Chinese who travel abroad is shopping.
True. That's what Jeremy Hunt said, that our previous ambassador said to David Cameron, said that if you want to have more Chinese coming to the UK, you just need to build more Bista villages. Yes. So, yeah. Okay.
Well, we'll discuss why we're all applauding that in a moment. I mean, why is that? Is that a good thing? I'm not sure, but we'll talk about that in a minute. Janine, again, I don't want to spend too long on this, but on this World Responsible Tourism Day, you mentioned, you know, Brazil's amazing resource of the Amazon basin, but, you know, you want to see more overseas visitors piling into Brazil to enjoy all of the sights and the natural beauty you've got. But, you know, how can we be sure you're going to do that and at the same time conserve properly amazing, you know, features of our planet like the Amazon rainforest and basin?
Yeah, I would like to point this from our emerging countries' point of view, because I feel that, I don't know if 3 or 4 years ago we would have here a BRICS session discussing. I feel that we have now some new interests from the world looking to our countries.
Sure, I think, and you also have more influence and power than you've ever had before.
And be responsible and I don't know quite well the other countries, but I feel that we have big challenges. And be responsible in our countries means to have very high responsibility with the natural resources, to alleviation of poverty, to deal with negative impacts of tourism, to mix like numbers of visitors and less visitors like in the Amazon, on Pantanal, or like very, very sensitive natural resources we have in our countries or historical sites. So it means that we have big challenges in terms of infrastructure, qualification, and at the same time to look to the alleviation of poverty, to preserve our natural and cultural resources. And besides that, I feel that people here, they want to learn how to do business in our countries, how to invest in our countries, how to promote their countries in ours, because it's a different way of doing business. And
is it? And do you think a lot of businesses aren't equipped at the moment to do it well and to truly understand what works in Brazil? You know, they maybe bring attitudes that work in North America or in Europe, but those same practices may not work in Brazil.
Yeah, of course, that's it. So we need to learn from other countries' experience. This is very important. We need to learn how to build these experiences in our countries because we have those differences. And also, I feel that as in the case of Brazil, we have some places that cannot receive lots of visitors.
Sure.
They need to be expensive places for few people. In other places, we can receive more people. So we need to mix our demand. We need to understand more this demand, and I feel that we can offer much more to them because I've been in China recently, and I feel that we are still very, very far from take the most of the experience that we can give to the visitor in our countries, because tourism is just starting to develop out there. So we don't offer more, we could offer more than we do actually. But it's a quite big challenge because we have other social problems and infrastructure problems.
Well, you raised, yeah, in that answer you raised a very important point, which actually, for those of you who heard my conversation with the writer and journalist Leo Hickman earlier, you'll know that we addressed, which was the degree to which it is true to talk about genuine trickle-down, that when overseas visitors come to emerging countries to enjoy the wonderful things that can be seen there, to what extent really do the tourist dollars trickle down to the communities where these destinations happen to be, and to what extent does it successfully distribute the wealth that comes in to the people who arguably need it the very most? I just quickly would like a comment from you three on whether you believe your organisation of your tourism industries does deliver that trickle down that everybody talks about and everybody wants, but Leo Hickman says, frankly, often does not happen, or happens only a little bit, very inefficiently. Sergei, to start with you.
On one hand, Russia is a quite active player in many international organizations, so we follow rules, but there are some specialities, and one of them is that what's happening at the moment, Russia is modernizing infrastructure. Yes, we need to create new projects, and it's done, but as very often investments are coming from outside of Russia, and there is eco expertise, and there are many international organizations involved, and we've got to follow rules. And in this way we learn them and we implement them. But talking about modernization, it's why it is important. I'll talk just about one example. Airport Domodedovo, it's the largest international airport in Russia.
The new
They're
Moscow
building
airport.
third runway at the moment. They don't have any problem like Heathrow at the moment with a third runway. Why? Just because the land was preserved initially for the airport growth. That was many years ago, but at the moment it's not creating any problems at all. So to have 3 runways for the international airport, it's a big advantage, and obviously Domodedovo is going to compete very successfully very soon with all major airports, including Heathrow in Europe as hub.
Heathrow can't compete with building a 3rd runway right now because they're not doing it. But
they're not doing it, but they're asking to build it.
No, well, you made a good case for the modernization that's happening, but I'm not sure I was really hearing much about the degree to which the investments coming into your country in the tourism sector are really trickling down, you know, that they're really having a benefit for local communities, local Russian communities, that may be the site for these destinations or these projects, but may not be getting much advantage from them.
Employment is a very important point.
So it's about jobs more than anything.
Yeah, it is about jobs. It's one point. The other point is that integrating Russia into the international community, because with such vast distances, it is difficult to be integrated. And if we're talking about Siberia, and you fly from the middle of Siberia to another part of Russia for 5 hours, and then, it is huge distance. And in this way, if we have international investor and they're coming and they do project, then...
Yeah. Let me bring Sanjay in, because unfortunately it is the case that, you know, hundreds of millions of the world's poorest people still live in India. You're telling me how excited you are about the growth potential of your tourism business, but is the tourism business really going to reach those people who are living in poverty in your country?
Yeah, in fact, I just mentioned that the whole focus is on employment generation. We have launched a new scheme which is Hunar Se Rojgar Tak, translated into English as from skill to employment. We pick up the local people, they are trained, and they are put into small hotels, big hotels. So what you had said, mentioned earlier was the real case, that it was not trickling down. The whole focus now is that it should trickle down. The policies are made in such a way that the local employment is given. People in the adjoining villages, the same village benefit in this whole thing. And that is what we are aiming at. At present, the direct and indirect employment of tourism is 50 million. And if we double our foreign tourist arrival and the rate goes at the same thing, we would be creating 25 million jobs in the next 5 years. That is the focus the country has. I'll take 2 quick minutes on what you mentioned on responsible tourism. Now, that is an area of concern for everyone. We are evolving a sustainable tourism criteria. We would be launching it sometimes in April, May. Because tourism has to be with the society, has to be with the environment, has to be with other factors. So most of the work is ready. We would be calling a global seminar and launching it. The third thing I just quickly wanted to mention, we do the classification of hotels, the ministry along with the stakeholders. Emphasis is given on water harvesting, energy saving devices, and sewage treatment plant. And the last and the most important is, we are a very diverse country. We insist on vernacular architecture, the carrying capacity. We don't want that everything should be in concrete. Whatever architecture we have is quite rich, and we want to replicate it.
So you're saying no identikit tower block hotels, and it's not going to happen?
No. In fact, the heritage hotels still maintain their old grandeur. The other hotels in Kerala or the Northeast, they are maintaining their old vernacular architecture. They don't go into concrete. If they go, we ask them not to do that.
Okay. And Roisin, just your thoughts on this particular...
I think being an emerging destination, we're actually fortunate because we've had no choice but to make responsible tourism the heart and the lifeblood of our tourism industry. Our government has worked with civil society and with the private sector to already launch minimum standards around responsible tourism with a list of criteria that currently we're going out on a consultation process to make sure that people subscribe to it and become part of it. Now, for us, responsible tourism has always been about poverty alleviation and communities benefiting from tourism. We've done the same thing in the area of quality assurance, where South Africa has developed criteria around quality assurance and grading of tourism attractions and accommodation in a way that it is now voluntary people subscribe to it because they see that the triple bottom line is of benefit to everyone. So the social aspects, environmental aspects, as well as the economic benefits of tourism have come together, very integrated into the strategy that drives tourism in South Africa. Today we were very proud that we launched the first fair trade packages on tourism in the UK market. Now we all know fair trade as a global trademark and brand that is very committed to communities benefiting. And South Africa is the only country in the world that has a certificate, fair trade certificate for tourism, which I think is groundbreaking. I think
well, we heard from Harriet Lamb earlier, and she's very proud of that, as I'm sure you are. So definitely kudos to you for that.
But I think also, you know, South Africa's made up 80% of our tourism industry is small and medium businesses. A lot of it from historically disadvantaged communities, because we've seen the value and the potential of tourism to create jobs and contribute to the economy.
And do you believe that that actually is an important point, that the huge multinational tour operators, the big chains of hotel operators and all that, that they are less likely to be committed to delivering on this sort of sustainability agenda than small and medium-sized businesses?
No, at the end of the day, it's about costs. And what they've realized is that renewable energy, water management, waste management, etc., costs less in the long run. So that is why they're coming on board. And that's been quite clear in South Africa.
Okay, terrific. Well, thank you for all of those insights. Ladies and gentlemen, we've talked a lot about the size of the markets that these countries represent, both in terms of their own burgeoning, increasingly strong internal tourism businesses, but also the number of visitors that these countries are now able to sort of send overseas, if I can put it that way. We've talked about some of the regulatory environment, about sort of investing in these countries. We've talked about the sustainability and environmental agendas that they all say that they are very much clued up in and addressing in their own businesses. I think what I'd like to do now is throw it open to some of you guys. I've got plenty more questions, but if you have any particular points you'd like to raise, given the businesses you're in or your perceptions of what these countries can offer, I'd love to hear them. So hands up, please. So we'll start with you. Introduce yourself, and I can see there's lots of questions already, so be as concise, as quick as you can.
My name is Boma Simeonanga. I'm the chairman for Triple Joy Tours Limited, based in Abuja, Nigeria. The biggest... In
Nigeria, Abuja, Nigeria.
Abuja, Nigeria. Well, we're excited about the BRICS and the development from the BRICS, especially in the areas of tourism. But one of the biggest constraints we have as outbound tour operators targeting the BRICS is access to visa. Visa access is a big problem, especially for where I come from.
Right.
So I would like to hear from the panel.
Well, that's a great question. I mean, we did discuss it a bit with Sergei from Russia, but who else wants to talk about if we are truly to become more globalized, if the tourism business around the world is going to acknowledge that there's new prosperity in so many different emerging countries, and these people, in different emerging markets want to travel more, it can only really work well if visa access is really freed up.
The worst is Russia.
The worst is Russia. Well, we've given... I gave him a bit of a hard time already, but how much pain can one man take?
Brazil and Russia, we don't have visas anymore.
But hang on a minute, let's not give the others an easy time. You guys, come on, let's just take the example of Nigeria. Who can claim that your own country is easy access for Nigerians, Nigerian tourists who want to see the world, who want to travel? Which of your countries is actually easy to get into?
No, I can't. You want Africa?
South Africa followed by India.
Yes, South Africa first, but we had to resolve issues, and now we have.
What do you mean? That sounds intriguing. What have you done?
Well, I think it was both ways. It was for South Africans as well as for Nigerians, and it required a political solution, which was a bilateral.
And now,
between the two countries.
do you have no visa access, or what is it?
No, we do have visas, but it's very easy to process.
So it's easy. So you get top marks. India gets second top marks, yes? So what's the deal with India?
India, normally, we have given visa on arrival. It started 2 years back. till now we have given 12 countries visa on arrival. But the whole aim is that a person should get visa in 3 days. And we try to monitor it as closely as possible. If it's delayed, we take up with the concerned authorities. And I'm sure Nigeria is no exception.
Yeah. All right. Well, Sergey, you get your bottom of the class, I'm afraid.
Thank you. The first from the bottom. Whatever. I think there are 2 points. One is, first of all, you can release or make life easier for Russians to get Nigeria visa, so it will help. And the second point is, when you do this, then obviously you're welcome to Moscow, to St. Petersburg, other Vladivostok, whatever cities of Russia. Participate in trade events and explain the situation. Because
do you accept it's a major problem for Russia right now? If you want to expand your tourism
I agree
business,
that visa is the major issue. Yes, I agree. Yeah.
And you talk to your
not security, not infrastructure, visa. Yes.
And why is it? Why is there such a political blockage here? Why do Russia's leaders not understand that if they want to develop their country, and we're talking in tourism, but we're talking in the wider sense, open Russia out to the world?
I'll be happy to talk in wide, whatever.
Yeah. Why do they not get it?
The point is 150 million live in Russia, and it's. All right, there are some political issues here, but we have got some history as well. So we're open country step by step. And in the past, we had just one international airport. You were talking about India. That's 3 airports and also 2 more airports now. But in the past, it was just one international airport. In the past, everybody was coming to Moscow to get their visas. Now there are a lot of consulates all over Russia.
Right.
And I think we started our
You're making
and as I said,
steps.
With St. Petersburg, I think it's very good example.
Okay, I'm going to stop you there because we've got a lot to get through. So very briefly, Janine, Brazil, how are you
performing? Very quickly, it's really a global issue, very important to Brazil, related some few countries, but I agree with you. It's a political issue and it needs to be put in the table with other issues, because normally our citizens, they used to migrate to other countries to live there, and now we have jobs in our country, so we don't need anymore this kind of politics. This needs to change in order to have another global system for visa facilitation.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the world needs to understand how quickly things are changing, and that, you know, the old perception that if, you know, somebody from Brazil was seeking to enter, I don't know, let's say Western Europe, that they were looking for work.
Yeah, the case of the Brazilians, they used to come to US to live over there, and now it's not anymore the case, so now it's business.
We've all got to change our mindsets.
Yeah.
All right, Adam, very quickly, China, let's face it, China ain't the easiest place to get into, is it?
Sure. Now, the real problem is the lack of communication between the tourism promotion authorities and the actually foreign offices, or in terms of UK, even the UK border control and so on. So in other words, where the tourism authorities always want to welcome foreign visitors, but it is not down to them to decide on the visa. That is a problem. And that's where, unless your national, you know, the ministries talk to each other and work together, it's difficult. But the good news is ADS agreement between China and any country is mutual. So in other words, not just making it easier for Chinese to go to those countries, but also to make those citizens from those countries coming to China easier.
Okay, well, it's a good question. Thank you for it. Now, let's be as quick as we can. Sir, you've been patient, and then get to you and you. So, you first, sir.
Ahmet Bektaş, OTI Holding from Turkey. So we don't have visa issue anymore with Russia, so it's changing. My question is to Adam. Everyone, since few days, the potential in China, what else? But why it's so difficult to process or opening a tour operator in China?
I know you had the same question, but the good news is China has started this year, very early this year, allowing foreign operators to start operating outbound business. Now, China has always allowed foreign operators to operate inbound, but outbound has been controlled until early this year. Now, I think you have to think about how will you compete against what we have within the China Travel and Tourism Club, which is National Association of Tour Operators and so on, 26,000 China-based either operators or travel agents and so on. So you will need to think about how to access the market, the language and so on. So actually often I go around to advise foreign tour operators to start with is to deal with inbound Chinese first before you jump into China, because to set up offices in China is much more costly. Employing local people is a cultural issue as well as investment and so on. So regulatory is over, so we welcome you.
Is it really though? Is it really?
Yes,
it really is going to be a genuinely level playing field. There aren't still ways in which Chinese operators will be favoured.
No, it's a market that decides. Surely, the regulatory wouldn't discriminate you for sure. But when you get in, you realize that there are so many big tour operators like CITS. They have 130,000 employees. How many will you have to compete against them? So this is a question.
He looks like a man who's confident he can cope. He's
up.
He's up for it.
We don't have such figures, but with less we do more business.
I'm sure you can. Yes, that's what I would advise.
Can find a good partner
the message
over
is,
there.
in China, the Turks are coming, so
Right,
you better watch out. All right, let's quickly have another one. I promised you, sir, and then over here. Oh, sorry, I didn't realise you. Now I'm being very unfair on the microphone. Sorry, but go on.
I'm Adrian Carr, I work for British Airways. I'll do a question to all of you, but in particular Sergei. My question for Sergei is, does he see Kaliningrad and Vladivostok becoming major tourist destinations in the future, one for the European market and one for the Asian market?
I'm going to stop you there because it's a good question, and because I want to get as many questions as possible before we finish, I'm afraid you'll have to stick to one. So that's it. Kaliningrad and what was the other one?
Vladivostok.
Vladivostok. Are they going to be major hub destinations, the two sides of your country?
Yes, as far as Vladivostok concerned, you know that Asian Pacific Economic Cooperation Summit is going to take place next year in Vladivostok, and a huge project started and will be completed by September next year. So Vladivostok will be ready to accept more, and the far east of Russia started to get more and more cruise ships, and this is big market for Russia, and as far as I remember, nearly 2 or 3 times more they have cruise ships every year. And
forgive me for interrupting, but is that anticipating a huge number of travellers, tourists from China in particular, or from all over?
Korea, Japan, and China.
Yeah.
And I would say that Korea is on the first place, and then Japan and China.
Right. And then the other question, Kaliningrad, briefly, you see that as a growth
yes,
city?
because of the geographical position, but obviously some job should be done with infrastructure and linking with mainland, and But it's a beautiful city, and there are
I've never been. I'd like to go. Now you've inspired me. Okay, next one. Yep. Oh, here we go.
My name is Brigitte Thomas. I work for Real Russia, and we're a small tour operator that specialises in travel to Russia. And one of the main things we deal with is visas to Russia for UK citizens. Now, over the summer, there was a lot of talk about introducing biometrics to the applications for UK citizens. And I was wondering if there was an update on that, because obviously it's going to be very detrimental to our companies.
Well, it's a question I can't answer, but can you, Sergei?
Obviously I can answer, but only that I don't have this information at the moment, but it will be...
I could have answered that, so but you don't know.
I can't say that. No, I don't know.
Sorry. Okay, sir. You could just try yelling, because we've only got one microphone. It's not fair. You're running around like a mad thing. There we go.
Hi, Alex Rayner from Pacific Asia Travel Association, PATA. We're actually collaborating with WTTC, with APEC Tourism Working Group. I'm actually writing a chapter on a solution to the problem that we're talking about here, e-visa. Now, I respect the point that there is a political issue. My argument is, why not make it easy by having an electronic visa? And to your point earlier, Responsible Tourism Day, e-visa is green, no paperwork.
Right.
Australia started in 1996. It's been around for more than 10 years.
Sounds like a good idea
working
to me.
effectively. Why do your countries not have e-visa solutions?
Yeah, come on, all 5 of you. Are your countries keen on the e-visa solution? And if so, when are you going to deliver it?
Just very briefly, I can say that with electronic documents, with customs, we had similar problem a few years ago. And since things changed, and now for nearly 2 years, it's much easier to deal with electronic documents for customs clearance. I think that visa is the next.
Yeah, but for general travel, I mean, can we all expect in the coming years to be traveling to all of your wonderful countries on e-visas?
I hope that by Olympic Games 2014, something will be
Adam,
done.
does Beijing like e-visas?
Well, they may like it, but visa is always mutual, so I don't see any Western country
yet. It always
yet.
comes back to this sort of, I'll do it if you do it thing, doesn't it?
And that's particularly with visa. That's the international protocol.
All right.
UK citizens don't need a visa to South Africa.
That's true. Yeah,
that's
but it's
even
not
more
just about,
green.
it's not all about UK citizens, as much as I might like to think it is, but it's not, obviously.
But on India's side, in fact, when we started visa on arrival, the whole thing has to be computerized and a master list has to be prepared.
Yeah.
We would be moving towards this, but our first focus is visa on arrival to as many countries as possible.
Okay. So
one small clarification I wanted. I heard, Sergey, international airports in India are not 4. There are more than 30, 40. The 4 are matching the best in the world.
He was only echoing me. I was giving you a hard time. Don't blame him, blame me. I was giving you a hard time. We're nearly out of time, but is there one more question? It's a chance for somebody to ask the last question, if there is one. Yes, sir. Let's just wait for the microphone and then give it your best shot.
I'm Sundar Dhani. I own the Ramada Caravella Beach Resort in Goa, India. And my question is that at least 5 countries identified as very high propensity for growth countries. Is it not possible that they can all agree that there should be a reciprocity between them on visas, at least?
Well, that's interesting. I mean, good question. I mean, you don't, we've all been saying, oh, well, look at the UK, you don't give us easy visa access or whatever. Forget what Western countries do and say. You could all get together.
Between us, we don't have problems.
No?
The last one was Brazil and Russia. We don't have any more.
So you guys all love each other.
I would say
between us, we can understand very well. Yeah.
We all are cooperating very well. Part of T20, part of IPSA, part of friendship. Yeah. So we'll be working towards that.
Yeah, well, good thoughts, sir. I mean, again, I began by saying when we talk about worldwide sort of economic problems and recession, it's a sort of very Westernocentric way of looking at the way the world works, and maybe I'm guilty of it even when it comes to visas, I don't know. But look, it is actually after 5 o'clock, which means time has run out on us. I know that there is a drinks reception next door, which people are warmly invited to, but let me just, before we go, thank all of my 5 panelists for a fascinating discussion. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you, Adam.
Thank you. Here's the data if you want.
Oh, okay.